The Federal Reserve raises interest rates for the seventh time this year to combat runaway inflation. Today's hike is half a percentage point. That's smaller than recent hikes, but the Fed is saying this is not it. Get ready for more rate hikes next year. Tuesday's CPI showed inflation cooled to 7.1%. That's down from 7.7% in October. But it's still really high, well above the Federal Reserve's goal of 2%. Joining me now to assess the latest Fed move is Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management. Thanks for being here, Matthew. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So what do our viewers need to know about this rate hike and how it will affect them and their families?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious listening to Jerome Powell. He makes it very, very clear that they're going to continue to stay the course. It's not necessarily about keeping the interest rate hikes at 75 basis points, but rather it is about the consistency and the systematic increase of those rate hikes in order to be able to get the inflation down to a manageable level, getting them down to that 2% mark that they really want to hit.
Yeah, so we are looking at more rate hikes next year. I'll get to that in a moment. But first, the president celebrated the inflation number going down for November, saying his economic policies are responsible for the decline, not the Fed. Who should get the credit? Should we be celebrating too?
Well, there's a lot at stake here. The first thing is that I really believe that if the Fed wouldn't have stepped in and did what they did, we could see runaway inflation. So is it possible that some of the law that we've seen put into action has helped maybe a little bit? But I think that the Federal Reserve is primarily responsible for seeing the inflation cool the way that it has. And I think that we can be fairly optimistic that this is a great sign. Seeing it go from 7.7 to 7.1, that was something that beat many analyst projections. And in this case, we know that November is a big month for spending. But we still have a lot of work to go. We know that this is going to continue to wear on families. We know that the labor market is extremely strong right now. There's way more job openings there than there is labor to be able to put into those positions. And even in today's notes, he makes it very, very clear that we're going to have to continue to see some softening unemployment, and that's going to need to climb. And so ultimately, that's really what's going to be affecting a lot of this inflation, what we see happening going into 2023.
So the president said that inflation is a global problem. It's not his fault. In fact, his policies are bringing it down in the U.S. Republicans say it's government spending that created this inflation problem. Is this administration at all responsible for the economic pain Americans are still feeling? Or is it only responsible for inflation when it's cooling down?
Well, no, I think that there's responsibility on both sides of this aisle. If we kind of think about our economy as a car, when you have the pandemic and you send everyone home and you say, okay, that's it, you can't go to work anymore, you can't produce, you can't do what you need to do. Well, that takes the economic car and puts it on the side of the road. And that's not good for anyone. That stalls out the economy. That not only happened to us, that happened to many other areas across the globe. But to get the car back on the road and going again, you've got to be able to incentivize that car to move. So what do? Well, you take and you flood the economy with liquidity, you print a bunch of money, and you take interest rates and you drive it down to zero. Because if you can do that, now the economy is going to have an abundance of cash. It's going to be cheap money to borrow. And if people are borrowing the money, consequently, they're going to be spending that money. And so as a result, now it's a matter of taking the foot off the accelerator pedal and starting to pump the brake. But that's kind of the problem. We still have a lot of liquidity in our economy right now. We still have people that are spending, and it's kind of adding insult upon injury when you see the Christmas season, the holiday season. People are just naturally going to be spending more at this time. We see that credit card usage is going up. I think a lot of American families are starting to think about, okay, well, I really don't have the liquidity that I want to have in order to be able to spend what I want to on Christmas. So in order to kind of spread this out over the course of time, I'm going to do a buy now, pay later scenario. That's going to have its own set of unintended consequences, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But we have to be very, very careful to watch what's continuing to happen within the economy as they raise these interest rates, because every time they do, they bring that car closer and closer to the side of the road. And of course, we're all afraid of the big R word. And that means that the car is now stalling out again. But the Fed has been very, very clear. They don't want to raise anything too fast. They don't want to do it too quickly. They just want to do what they have to do in order to be able to make this inflation abate so that life is livable again for Americans. But it's going to be some pain between now and that time.
Yeah, no doubt the extended lockdowns played a major factor in this disaster. Moving forward, what do you think the interest rates will look like next year? And what about the possibility of triggering that R word, recession?
Well, first and foremost, what I'm telling my clients as their fiduciaries, we have to be very acute to the fact that there's going to be continued rate increases. I see rate increases occurring at least into the first quarter of next year, 2023. Today, Jerome Powell comes out and says, right now they've got an estimate as a peak at 5.1%. I see that they may end up having to increase that. So it could get up to 5.25, could get up to 5.5. Some analysts are calling for a little bit more. I'm not that pessimistic, but I do believe that it's going to be something where we are going to see the stock market especially affected by this. We're going to see the labor market continue to soften. We're going to see layoffs. It's just a natural part of the process of trying to bring this inflation into check, which is absolutely necessary for us all.
Right. Matthew Johnson, Johnson Wealth and Income Management. Appreciate your insight today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You asked for it, and now the wait is almost over. OAN Live is adding video on demand. OAN Live is already the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting national and international headlines. And now, the nation's top-rated primetime political talk shows, investigative reporting, and even more great content will finally be available on demand. Never miss your favorite talk shows again, like Real America with Dan Ball or In Focus with Stephanie Hamill. Plus, in-depth investigative reporting from Pearson Sharp, Chanel Rion, Caitlin Sinclair, and the rest of One American News' all-star investigative reporting team. All available anytime, anywhere. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting and political talk shows One American News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.